Welcome to In the Hunt podcast. We will bring clarity to the complex game of golf. Start your path to better play today. This is Brian Bailey from Charlottesville, Virginia, and I'm joined with Mark Sweeney from Windermere, Florida. And we welcome you to the hunt.
Welcome to this episode of In the Hunt podcast. This is Brian Bailey here in Charlottesville, Virginia. I'm joined with Mark Sweeney. Today's topic is going to be about coaching styles and how students force you as a coach to change to help them improve and reach their level of golf that they want. So as we dive into this topic, Mark Sweeney is going to take control of this episode. So welcome, Mark Sweeney, on day X3000 on the coronavirus.
Yeah, thanks. It's pouring rain and thundering here, and it's just like I was thinking, oh no, I can't go outside. But then again, I haven't done that for 30 days, regardless of the rain. So it's good to be sitting here doing a podcast at least and talking to you folks. Yeah, it's an interesting topic today because I think that every coach out there has a different set of students who come to see them, and some are much easier, and some are more difficult, and some progress better. And I think we're just going to dive in and kind of get a taste for how you classify different players, how you profile them when they come, and do you actually change your coaching style based on who the player is? So, I know for me, I get fairly similar players, but I've had kind of everything across the board. Brian, how do you classify your players? If somebody calls you for a lesson or to work with you, what is your process of going through and just kind of understanding who they are?
It's basically a phone interview. Anytime I talk with a new player, I just kind of talk with them, see where they are, what level they're at, what their goals are, and then from there start trying to set up a plan on how to get there. I'm fortunate. I deal with a lot of higher end players. I don't teach many beginners, many club players. Most are high level juniors, collegians, aspiring touring professionals that are on different tours trying to get to the main tour, and even touring professionals. So my perspective is a little skewed on that aspect. So most of the players I have are almost all high competitive golfers, and I'm more teaching refinements and getting skills and sets better, more so than teaching the whole game. Now I am taking on a great achievement with my son. He's 12. He's just starting golf. So I'm kind of teaching him. So that has been a huge learning experience for me, taking my son that knows nothing about golf and trying to build him into a player that can play competitively one day. And I think that puts me under more stress than working with any touring professional.
I'm sure he says the same thing, actually.
Oh, I'm sure he does.
Jamie, how about you? You work with a lot of tour players, but you also worked with a lot of club players and juniors. How do you think about your students?
Yeah, well, I'd just like to say before I start that, Brian, will you be teaching your son to drive a car after this?
Driving a car, yes.
So you're still going to keep trying? Okay.
Yeah, he actually drives the neighborhood right now at 12. Don't tell the police.
Right.
They're out in the country. They can get away with anything.
Yeah, so I'm very similar to Brian, whereas I would have a bit of an interview, but mine tends to happen on our first meeting because I want to get face to face with them. I think I'm a very visual person, so I like to look at their reaction to my questions, and I like to read them when I'm discussing what they've been up to. But the very first thing I'll ask them is, okay, so where do your problems lie? And what I have found is they're never specific about the faults or the problems that they're facing. They'll either say, well, I putt okay, or I'm just not putting well enough, but they can never verbalize what it is that they are good or bad at. So the quickest way for me to find that out would be to test them. And we use one of the a test I use on a putting green, put them under a bit of pressure and have a look at what's going on there. But I would do the same thing with a club level golfer. Just using the Gameforge data, we just know how many different styles or different putts that the players actually face in a round. So we can create those, and we can have a look at where their weaknesses are.
Do you ask them ahead of time kind of what their goals are and what type of player they want to be?
Very much so. I'm a big advocate of goal setting and ambition. And it's going to tell you a little bit about the nature of the beast. So I'm a firm believer in goals. And if they haven't got any particular goals, that'll be one thing that we definitely set down and write. I want them to to have an ambition or an end result, and I'd like them to have it as far into crazy sphere as we can. If they just want to get on tour, then the chances are they're going to get on tour and not make enough money to stay on tour. If they want to win 3 times and become an automatic pick for the Ryder Cup, then being on tour and finishing in the top 50 is just part of the process. So yeah, absolutely.
Interesting. How about you, Gareth? You work with a lot of club players.
Yeah, Mark, I see the full spectrum, and I think I could probably put them into 3 separate categories. One is, I've been referred to you. You've got 1 hour on quitting golf. 2 is sort of retention and stabilization of where I'm currently at. And 3 is the improver, the striver who's always trying to get that a little bit better. The hardest lesson will always be number 1. You got 1 hour to fix me or I'm done. Because with that mindset coming to a golf lesson, you're done already. Basically, it's very hard. And I think most coaches will just throw stuff at somebody at that point in time and try to help them to feel like they're making some tangible difference when they're actually not. The second player is just they enjoy golf, they like golf, they're trying to retain and stabilize their performances. They're not a massive go-getter, not going after the goals that Jamie was just talking about. And then the improver, the striver, they're always the thing with them is you'll find they tend to be curious and they just want to see where they can get to. And it won't necessarily be getting on tour. It won't necessarily be about winning tournaments, but they're just curious about the outer edges of their own talents and abilities, and they want to explore them.
Yeah, you touched on something there that I like to think about when I'm thinking about how to profile players. If you think about, a scale from the how important is golf to you. So, I always make the mistake. We used to always make the mistake of thinking golf was super important to everybody, and it's not. You have some people who it's number 1 on their priority list, and their livelihood and feeding their kids depends on it. And you have people who just play 3 or 4 times a year and just want to kind of poke away at it and see if they can get a little better. So I like to think of the importance level on one axis, and the other axis, I like to think of how committed they are to improving. Because I've seen everybody on the scale from tour professionals who really don't seem like they have much commitment to golf. Believe it or not, I've seen more of those than you could imagine. They just don't seem like they care a whole lot, frankly. I think they've gotten where they've gotten because of raw ability, but they don't seem really driven. And I've seen, 20 handicaps who will go out every single day in practice to try to get to 18 handicap. So it's a hard mix there, so that's everything from completely non-competitive to competitive, but that commitment level, I think, is really important to know. How much time are they actually devoting to trying to get better, or listening to what you have to say? Do you guys think it's kind of similar? Have you gone through that process before, Jamie?
Yeah, absolutely. Dealing with young players, if you could sell a bottle of commitment and drive and ambition, then I think you'd make a lot of money. And I think quite quickly, when discussing what the player thinks they need to do, you can single these guys out. And I'm just sitting there thinking now, if I think I've got a good school of young tour players, and all of them are very driven, very meticulous, and when I think back to other guys I've taught, I realize why some are more successful than others now. And that seems to be the missing ingredients, because they've all got talent. They all hit the ball great. They've all scored well at some stage. But I think the happy-go-lucky fall into performance guys in the past. We can look at a lot of world-class tour players who somehow just found their way to greatness, even though they really didn't do any particular anything particularly different. But I think all the tour players now are machines, and if you don't have that drive and that gumption, then you're not going to do it.
Yeah, certainly. If you want to stay there, you better be a machine. You might have a good year or two, but you're not going to do a long run if you're not really committed. How about you, Gareth?
Mark, the one thing I think coaches nowadays are not good at doing, and I'm sorry to say this, but I'm going to anyways, we're not good at piquing their interest and keeping them motivated or committed. And that's something that if we set the correct challenges and get them curious and hit those buttons and make them go, I'm going to bloody well do this. I'm going to show you I can do this. they will stay committed. And with all this technology that's in the background, with the robotics and the machines, as Jamie's alluding to, we're not getting people excited about the creative side of golf enough, in my opinion, and we should be. We should be saying, how much curvature can you create, low, high, left, right, whatever is the case. And at that point, it doesn't matter whether on the practice ground for 8 hours or 8 minutes, because they're so absorbed they won't notice.
Yeah, I mean, I've certainly seen players who just love golf for what golf is and just want to go out and just learn everything they can. And I've seen players who go out and they cry every time they have to play. Like literally, they're in tears because it's become such a drag for them, environmentally, at least the way they've been taught, the family situation, whatever it is. They literally hate the game, but they're cursed that they're really good at the game. And so I think Bob Rotella said a long time ago that one of the biggest curses is being really good at something you don't like doing, because nobody wants you to quit, and all your support system is trying to get you to stay in the game like that. That being said, and I don't expect y'all to name any names here, but starting with you, Jamie, who is your best and worst student and why? Not who they are, but what made them either a really good student or a really difficult student?
Okay, so we'll start with best. Coached a world-class golfer, extremely high in the rankings, a bit of a legend. And after about 30 minutes of testing and giving him different reads, different scenarios, and getting him just to hit putts, we had a double break, for example, and he hit a putt that didn't finish particularly close, shall we say, and it was a bit of a misread. And I said, okay, would you like to discuss that? And he said, no, it's a 22-foot putt. I've got a 2-foot putt now. I'm more than happy with that. He very high ranked player.
He let you off easy on that one.
Yeah. So he was very pragmatic with the fact that he didn't actually expect to hold the putt anyway. So for him, it was just a case of, okay, so maybe I got my number slightly wrong or my process was slightly out, but it wasn't a particularly makeable putt. And I don't get that many double breaking putts in a season anyway, so he's not going to lose any sleep over it. So he was very simple. If he made a mistake, we'd discuss it, and I felt that there was no kind of panic with him, and no kind of, well, if I got it wrong this time, will I get it wrong in a tournament? And what's that? That I didn't see any fear from him in that respect. And then we'll flip it on the other side. The worst customers would be the ones that say, yeah, but I can't miss that putt. Why did I miss it? What's going to happen if I miss that several times in a round? And they weren't able to just accept the fact that one piece of the jigsaw was missing, and that you don't have to make that many putts of that length to be particularly good. So they want to know what their technique looked like. What did my stroke look like is a question I hate. What did it look like? Well, where did it finish, and what could you do different next time would be my reply to them. And especially when this guy was playing for the pinnacle of the game, and a lot of these people might be just playing for fun, and they've been taught that technique is everything, and perfection is everything, and they believe that the tour players are perfect. So
I think that's a big mistake that a lot of amateurs think is that they're maybe striving for perfection where they really don't need to be. Some of the most enlightening lessons I've ever had were players who had never touched a golf club. I've taught executives who were literally on a retreat. They were just playing around for fun and never touched a golf club. I actually learned a lot from those lessons. Yeah. It was surprising how simple they are and how accepting they were with just kind of getting speed basically correct. Brian, how about you? Do you have similar experiences to that, or would you call your best and worst for different reasons?
Well, they can be best and worst in the same lesson. So,
in the same hour.
No, I think I classify it probably in two ways. I think my best students tend to be internally driven. So they're curious. They want to understand. They research. They do a lot of stuff on their own. They challenge themselves a lot. So most of the higher performing players I see are more curious about getting better and driving that, whether that be a collegiate player trying to make a lineup, whether that's a junior trying to go, or even a tour player. The ones that are kind of intellectually curious, they're the fun ones, because I get to have conversations. We get to think differently than everything being an X and an O and a performance piece and move on. The ones that challenge me the most are usually the ones that are being driven externally. Parents, a lot of times, especially for juniors, that are driving them to be something. And it's not really the kid wanting to do it per se, but the parent and driving. And I know collegiately, God, the carnage I saw parents do collegiately with players, from, having every birdie you make, I'll give you $1,000, and just the weirdest stuff you'll ever see. Like, everything was for them externally driven. Player didn't give a rat's tail about golf, but they said, hey, I knew players that they'd finish and go, hey, I made $700 today. Oh, okay. But did that help the team? Did you do the stuff to prepare us to be ready as a team? So to me, that was always the hardest struggle for me, was the player that was maybe naturally gifted, that had skills and just could do it. But I said right now, if I had a college team, I'd have 5 players that internally wanted it, and we'll figure it out over the next couple of years, opposed to you might not have. And when I was at Virginia, that was really our driving strength. We had coaches that would say, anytime that UVA showed up, we don't know who the hell's getting out of the van. We don't know what team's going to be there, and we don't know any of their names. So kind of a trick for us is we didn't go get the best players, but we got players that bought into what we believed in, that were kind of intrinsically driven and curious, and it was amazing what we could accomplish as a team. I think that carries it even professionally. Like, in my interview I do with players, I actually give them kind of a questionnaire before we talk. Take me through what you do, how do you train, what are your thought process on this and this. And really, by them answering that questionnaire before we even talk, I really get a good sense of what drives them and what their beliefs on it. Like, are they reflecting on what they're doing? Are they just saying, well, at 8 o'clock I hit a bucket of balls, and at 9 o'clock I get a power bar, and at 10 o'clock I putt? What is the player, or is the player going, my chipping hasn't been very good, so I've been putting focus here. So again, just by the way that they converse and talk with me, I kind of get that understanding. But like I said, I've had players that are externally driven and made a whole lot of money on tour, and I got players that are internally driven that can't make it on tour. So
yeah, it's interesting. I've seen, I used to think I kind of knew the profile of a world #1 player, and I realized as I met more of them that they're all different. They do some things the same, but they can be very, very different. Gareth, how about you? What do you see, especially, at a club level, mid handicaps, older golfers, kind of what would make one of them a really good student for you versus not?
Yeah, Mark, I'm going to answer that in a sec. I just want to make a recommendation for anybody listening. You yourself and Brian have both spoken about kids doing stuff, because it's not coming from them, it's coming from the parents. Parents listening to this, just go and read Andre Agassi's book, Open. Just go and read it, and that will really that's an eye opener. Excuse the pun, but I think every parent who's got a kid involved in the sport should read that book. It is fascinating and terrifying at the same time. To go back to your question now, Mark, the best players I work with, from tournament players to 38 handicap golfers, do 2 things. They accept where they're starting from, and they take responsibility for what's going to happen next. So they will arrive going, look, I know where I'm at. It's not good. I need to get to here, and I will take responsibility. I will make the changes. I will go and put in the practice and the training, whatever. And therefore I will develop as a golfer. And the hardest player to work with is the one who first won't admit or acknowledge where they're starting from. So, yeah, look, I'm a 20, but I'm actually a 12. No, your best scores are 20. So you're probably 25. So you're twice, you're 2 times worse than you think you are. And my job at that point gets really difficult, because if they don't accept where they're starting for, and probably at that point won't take responsibility for anything that happens next. So it's that guy who rocks up and goes, I'm going to hand you a bunch of money, but if I don't get better, it's your fault. Well, all I can really do is show you or guide you, but I can't make you better. You've got to take responsibility and go off and adhere to what the suggestions are, apply them, and come back to me with some suggestions, maybe as how we would adapt going forward. So, and you see, you said this a moment ago, you've seen world #1s that are so different in profile. There are no set profiles, but there are certain traits, whilst they may appear in different in slightly different ways, they're still there, right? You know, the player who takes responsibility. I missed that putt. What do I have to go and do about it? I didn't prepare correctly. What do I have to go and do that's a player who will find a way to get better. Yeah.
Yeah, that definitely falls into what Jamie was saying, because, you know, I'd say the best or easiest student that I've ever worked with was very accepting, very calm, just what do you want me to do? And she would do everything you asked her, never questioned anything, which made me a little nervous, but made it very easy as a coach. And whatever you asked her to do, she would do for the next 30 days. You know, it would just be burnt in immediately. So I actually had to be very careful with her, because if you steered in the wrong direction, it was actually hard to undo that. So you had to, you know, choose very carefully, you know, what you were changing or modifying or having her work on, because she was actually so pliable. She would just immediately do it and commit to it. But like Jamie said, she was very calm about the results. She wasn't like, I missed that putt and giving you a dirty look, which I've certainly had players before. They miss a 20-footer and literally give you a dirty look, like what went wrong there, and they burn the edge on it. It's like, well, nothing went wrong there. Let's move on. Which brings on, you know, the harder players, the ones that just question. What if it's 1.1% slope but not 1% slope? What if the wind blows? What if it hits a piece of sand? Like, and they get so freaked out about external factors that largely they can't control, that it makes it almost impossible to coach them, because they won't just accept the fact that, yes, if you do this, you don't have to be perfect and your performance will be better. And that's why we're here. We're not here to tick and tie every single perfect thing in your stroke and everything. We're just here to perform better. Yeah, Jamie.
Do you think that's down to the sort of improvement in technology and coaching, where everything is microscopically analysed down to, you know, quarter of a degree shaft lean, face angle? Do you think they've got so used to having this real microscope on their impact factors that they're expecting that even when it comes to green reading and speed control and the ball not going in?
Yeah, I certainly think that adds fuel to the fire. So there are students that are, you know, ADHD type students who, if you know, I used to think the very scientifically minded students would be perfect for aim point back in the old days when we did the charts and it was very technical. And I actually found over time that they were actually the worst students for it, because you're basically, you know, taking somebody who's already a little neurotic and you're just fueling it even more. You know, what we really need to do is go the opposite direction and calm it down. So that actually can be very difficult. And even for very smart players, like I get some students who I call very smart, and they dig really deep into everything, almost too deep. And you have to almost dumb them down a little bit, you know, and say, listen, don't worry about that. Don't think so hard about it. Just back to, are we performing better or not? Have you had a similar experience, Gareth? Or
I'm just going to pick up on something that Jamie said there, Mark, and I think golf is a great kind of microscopic view of the world. And if we look at the world as it is now, you know, particularly the developed world, everything's about perfection as it stands. You've got to have perfect teeth, perfect pecs. You've got to have beautiful eyes, gorgeous hair. I'm looking at you right now, Mark. I'm seeing all these things, but not everybody has them, right?
His hair's not as good as last time. You've not.
No, it's not.
No, it is. I think it's golf reflecting what we're seeing in a larger scale within society. I certainly wouldn't think it's good for society, and I don't think it's great that kids are paranoid about what picture they put up on Facebook or whatever. But yeah, Jamie, you're right. I mean, it is this very detailed, microscopic. People are just going to these levels that are not required to be good athletes. And we know this. We've all played sports at decent levels. You were not thinking about a certain angle of elbow or knee or hip as you're executing good sporting movements. That's not possible. So yeah, it's been overanalyzed.
But do you think that when they've had other lessons, they've missed a putt, they've looked at the screen and the coaches then said, what you did wrong was, or that didn't go in because?
Jimmy, that's a great point. And I think if you were to ask me now, what's the one thing I've got much better at as a coach, it's being silent.
Agreed.
Yeah. I
agree with that too. I find it very easy too. The best lesson is the one you don't have to say a word in the whole time.
and Mark, even when they miss, I don't feel the need to fill the void, right? Yeah. It's okay. You missed. Let's just hit another one. Nothing's wrong here. You just need to hit another putt, and one of them will go in at some stage, right?
Right. Yeah. Do you find one of those profiles in your experience excels the most and gets the furthest, the internally driven ones, I find that the best players that I've worked with they're very focused, but they're also calm. They have an intense focus on the task, but they're not getting freaked out about it and worrying about things. They just, I had one player once that I think we had 10-foot putts for 20 minutes, and I videoed her, and she made every single putt for 20 minutes, different putts, not the same putt, for 20 minutes, filled up all the memory on my iPad. At the end, I go, wow, you just didn't miss a putt for 20 minutes. She goes, really? Like, literally wasn't even aware of it. And it was one of the best putting displays I've ever seen in my life. But there was a focus there, and definitely somebody who would work hard, but also very calm about it, and not worried about results so much.
I would say when you see somebody on that journey, there is an assuredness where, if not today, then soon. So they're not in a rush. They understand it is a journey, and you're absolutely right. There's that calmness because they're not saying it has to be right now. It can unfold, but I'm going to stay on my journey, so I will get there.
Yeah, I'm not Mr. Right. I'm Mr. Right Now.
I like that.
Brian, in college golf, you have a limited time. You got 4 years maximum with players. Anything change when you have a very specific window? Now, the good news is you do have them for 4 years probably, whereas, as a normal coach, you might have them for an hour, you might have them for 20 years, but you have a very specific time frame with your players when you were teaching college. How does that change the equation?
No, I think the college coach has a big step up on most coaches because one is we train them every day, a couple hours every day. We actually see them compete on the golf course. We get to learn what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are. You could even start predicting at certain situations, this player is probably going to react this way because this is what they've always done in the past. So to me, it's fascinating. The collegiate coach really gets to see a player in and out. They're higher end players. You're refining games. You're not really building games, not at the Division I level. So you're really refining games and trying to get them to their goal. But I would say that 4-year window is probably the only thing I miss in college coaching, is having that 4-year window with a player and getting them better, because you're the voice, you're who they look to. You actually can help them through that process of learning to become an elite golfer competitive wise, because a lot of the players they're playing with collegiately are going to be the same players that are fighting for tour cars, that are fighting for wins out on the tours over the years. So that college experience is really important for the player to understand what it takes to win, what it takes to get better, and how to take your next step. So to me, as a coach that like to actually teach golf, that incubator of 4 years, having a player day in, day out, creating training plans to get each one better is a unique experience that a lot of coaches really don't have. We got paid to take them places to compete, where a lot of club pros and things like that, we had many a conversation with a lot of club pros telling us, well, the player never does this, but we're like, anytime player X is under pressure, they snap hook their drive. I've never seen my players snap hook the drive. Well, I've seen your players snap hook 3 or 4 of them over the last 2 tournaments.
Because they're only watching them on the range.
They're only watching them with, and a lot of them are only watching them with a box, So I think that experience as a collegiate coach has, taught me more about a player and how to train them and how to be adaptive in what we train, how we train, and how we present material. Because again, if you have 5 players and one is a ex-pro teaches me this belief system, this pro teaching me this, you've got to be adaptive enough as a coach to change your verbiage to what they understand and to get them better, and not be arrogant and say, no, this is the only way you understand how to do this. So, I think the flexibility in coaching that I learned there is just kind of transferred out. So now when I have a touring pro come up to me, I can very easily flex to what they need. Or if I have a junior coming, I can change my process of what we're teaching and how we're doing, and how I, change language, or maybe some change performance goals and all that. So I think that the collegiate coach it's a different bird. There's lots of ways of doing it. There's different types of coaching styles inside of that. But I think just being able to see your player compete, put them under pressure, and start to understand what they do, that is part of coaching. You better understand that. If you're just on the range all the time teaching X wrist angle, flexion, this, that, beta torques, whatever you want to call it, does that help my player get the ball in the hole when they're one up with 1 hole to go. I don't think they're thinking torques on my shaft. My guess.
Yeah, we've all had moments with students where, at least internally, we've decided that this is not going anywhere. We're better off without each other. Have y'all actually fired students? I know we've all, I'm sure, have students not come see us anymore, and sometimes we're happy about that occasionally. Is that something that you would go through, or if you know that a student might not be a good fit for how you coach, would you say no to them in advance? In other words, would you say, I only teach competitive golfers, and I don't. I teach a lot of the competitive juniors, but I teach, pretty much anybody who wants to. A lot, there's the thinking out there that, maybe we shouldn't be doing that. But, from my perspective, you've got players who really love the game of golf, and they're super avid. And, are you going to say no to them just because they're not going to commit? They're not competitive, or they're not going to commit, 20 hours to working with you. What are y'all's feeling about that, Gareth?
That's a really interesting question, Mark. And let me try a quick experiment here with the three of you. You all had coaches as kids, right? If you reflect and quickly think about 3 things that they did really well that would say he was a great coach or she was a great coach and maybe the other one wasn't, I'm going to speculate that you're not going to say technical detail was one of the keys.
I agree with that.
You probably felt like they cared about you getting better. You felt like they've got your back, different things like that. So that relationship between coach and player is critical from both directions. There's no point in dressing this up. So, people can come to me and go, well, you need the money. Yeah, but I don't need the hassle. If you're going to come and throw money at me and make me feel like I'm your slave, then that's not going to work. If this is a partnership and we're on a journey together, then it becomes very interesting, and I'm all in at that point. If, again, going back to what I said earlier on, if you're not going to take responsibility, I don't want to know. Generally speaking, if you really are going to quit golf, I'll try and help you over the next hour, because that's just me. But overall, I much prefer to work with people on programs, develop relationships, and I watch those, and they roll over year on year on year, and it's really exciting to be involved in those journeys.
Yeah, the best coach I ever had, he did exactly what you said. He wasn't a technical coach, but he said to me, if you're committed, I'll give you 120%. He goes, but if you don't care, I don't care, and don't waste my time, and walked off. And he was the first coach in my life that made me take personal responsibility for my own game. And he's like, I'm there if you want, but if you don't, go do something else, and I'll go do something else. And that was the first time I ever met him. And he's just right in your face. You make a decision right now. Are you internally committed to this or not? Jamie, what's been your experience?
Yeah. First of all, can I just say that with Brian's, the 4-year cycle with the college kids is the dream, because there's the conversations that can happen away from the golf course when the barriers are down, when the intensity of the lesson or what's been happening since the last lesson's not there. And this will sound silly, but where I coach, there's like a 3-minute buggy ride from the clubhouse to the short game area. And I've learned more in that 3 minutes when I'm driving the buggy and it's just a conversation than I would do from being on a green, right, off we go, start. So if you can get that buy-in, and most of my clients, I work on a monthly, I see them once a month, twice a month, and once they've bought into the longevity of a plan, it's a hell of a lot easier. But just those, because you're on the clock all the time when you're coaching, you just don't get that quality time, and I think that's where you get some real nuggets of truth.
Yeah, certainly, Brian. Certainly, Brian. When you're traveling and driving your van without your team on it for hours and hours on end, year after year, you probably get to know too much about the players, right?
We as a coaching staff knew everything. We had players that we'll never forget. One year, one of our players would always show up with makeup on from the night before, so we knew exactly what happened. Like, we didn't say anything, and then one of the other girls ratted. Yeah, that's right. One of the other girls ratted us out, and she learned to take her makeup off. But we knew what she was up to the night before, because she'd show up with makeup still on it at our 6:30 or 7 o'clock morning workouts. But yeah, kind of like what Jamie said, getting to know the player and getting to know them and their goals and their aspirations and what moves them that is imperative. If you don't understand your player, you're not their coach. You're just an instructor. An instructor just teaching them the game of golf. To coach them, you've got to know the player, how to motivate them, how to move them. When they're comfortable, how to make them uncomfortable. When they're uncomfortable, to give them a hug. Everything's going to be all right. Here's where we were. Here's where we are right now. Look at the growth. Don't give up. We're on the path. Having that ability, that relationship, again, is really key to helping your player. And I've been fortunate since I've got out of college. I don't really teach. Pretty much I run about 5 players on kind of a retainer, long-term yearly plan, year to year. Pretty much everyone's rolled over but one in the last 5 years. So that's kind of how I kind of teach, and that's kind of my strength is I'm a coach. I'm there every day. I get phone calls. My wife laughs. I get texts. World's coming to an end. Oh my God. I'm like, nah, send me a video. Come on. We've worked on this 300 times. Look at this image. What are you missing? Oh, my hand path is here. Yes, of course. How are you going to fix it? Well, we always do this. Yes, of course. So why'd you text me? You could have fixed this. So
why'd you text me?
Why'd you text me? You could have fixed it. But again, it's that knowing that if they ever need something, I'm there for them. They can call me anytime, text me, whatever. And to me, it's that relationship. That's what makes a coach separate than what a lot of people would consider an instructor, which is I'll see you once every blue moon. And if you're hooking it, well, let's get rid of your hook. That's an instructor. That's great. They're needed. That's part of the game, but that's not where my strength is.
Yeah, that's interesting. That I totally agree with you on that. The one part that makes it difficult is that I teach a lot of competitive juniors, and a lot of them are 14 and younger, and you just don't have that kind of relationship with children. You know what I mean? You don't. You're not texting each other, and so you see them at the golf course, and that's about it. And a lot of times their parents are kind of telling them what they think, and a lot of kids that age are not really comfortable enough with an adult to open up. So it takes a while. It takes time to actually kind of know their personalities, because you're just not getting it like you would from an adult or a competitive golfer who's just going to unload on you. All right. Anything else y'all have to add?
Mark, just
Want me to answer the question now after Bailey stole my question?
He stole your question.
How did I steal it? He asked me a question.
I said I echoed how good you have it having 4 years at college, and I don't know. Then 5 minutes later, you'd finish talking. Okay. I'll summarize.
Well,
the floor is yours, Jamie.
You have the floor.
I think you can spot early on if there's a chemistry in the lesson and you get some good energy. I think you kind of you get a feel for the people, and you can they're very good to work with, obviously. But if you're not feeling it, then it's probably going to go nowhere.
Yeah, you can kind of tell those in advance, can't you? I
honestly think that you and when you feel it, that's a coach's skill, right? It's another skill that no one ever talks about, right? We had a conversation the other day about what makes a good coach, and I think it's the person that can plug into someone's learning style, understand what they want and how they're going to get there. So I guess chemistry comes into it.
Yeah, you definitely find a lot out once you get to know a player better. I had one player I'd worked with for 3 years and couldn't quite figure out why her scoring wasn't better in tournaments. And after 3 years, she says, well, the issue is whenever I'm playing well, I get nervous about being interviewed because I'm terrified to be interviewed, and I find myself shooting higher scores because I'm so afraid of being interviewed. And I was like, wow, like that explains a lot. But it was 3 years. I was kind of like a deep, dark secret, but it was 3 years of working with this player when that finally came out. So interesting. That doesn't happen in a 1 hour lesson. So good. Thank y'all for coming today. This is a conversation that I think coaches have one-on-one a lot of times, but we rarely compare, and it's definitely different across different types of students, how we react to them, which ones can you see coming across the parking lot sometimes that you just know it's going to go nowhere. In other students, when you get them in the first day, you're like, wow, this player is really going to take off and really do some amazing things given time. And I've certainly had players I worked with, that I was so impressed with them the first time I ever worked with them, and they ended up winning loads of tournaments. And some of the other ones you just know for a fact it's just not going to go anywhere. It's usually attitude based. It's usually not skill based. It's usually attitude based. So thank you for joining In the Hunt today. Anybody, if you have any questions, please let us know. Brian, you can fill us in on how to do that.
Yeah, definitely. You can reach out to us at contact@mygameforge.com. You can reach out to us on Anchor, Instagram. Instagram, I'm getting tons of messages there. I try my best to keep up with that. Insta chat, I struggle with. My daughter sits down, she's 16, and navigates me through the system much better than I ever can. But you can definitely reach out to us there. We appreciate you listening to In the Hunt. In the last 3 or 4 days, we've had over 400 downloads, which is cool. So keep that coming. We appreciate it, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.